Good afternoon, friends. Today we are again meeting for the second interactive session between students and teachers. As I had told you a week before, that basically these sessions are aimed to discuss about the practical difficulties which are faced by the students in Viva. There are no specific books available which are aimed at these kinds of questions, because the questions can be lot many. A student whose mind is very inquisitive will have questions at each and every steps of the practicals. So these queries needs to be solved by somebody, and we are making a genuine attempt here to discuss these kinds of problems so that students in mass having the same kinds of difficulty, their problems can be solved. Myself, Rakesh Patel from R.G. Shah Science College, and with me is Dr. Bhairav Singh Rawal from Municipal College, Kalol. Dr. Rawal has also a wide experience of around 32 years, and coincidentally we happen to be a very close colleagues, and we started our career together in Karat. With this brief introduction, I would not like to spare the time for other kinds of formalities. Rather than that, we will directly begin with the session. Now, the sessions will be in a way that student will ask a question and those questions will be answered by two of us. So let us begin the session. The first question from Nishit. Mr. Nishit, please ask the question.
I am Nishit Jawal from M.B. Patel Science College. My question is that why it is not possible to relate the results of sodium sulfide determination in oxygen transfer rate determination by sodium. Why it is not possible?
Okay, Nishit, I understand. You want to ask that why it is not possible to correlate the results which I have done in laboratory with the actual fermentations. In laboratory, we do normally estimate the OTR, that is mass. It is one of the mass transfer process for oxygen. We call it as the oxygen transfer rate. And can this be related to the actual fermentations which are there in industries? Well, the answer is very much no. But still, it is a basic practice to have an idea that what kind of mass transfer rate or oxygen transfer rate will be taking place in that kind of thing. Because in laboratory, we are doing it with that of a sodium sulfide, taking the pure solutions of sodium sulfide. Now, if you want to modify it to certain extent and correlate it with that of the industries, then we should use the same kind of medium which are being used in industry, and in that medium or in that broth, we have to add sodium sulfide additionally, so that the other ingredients which are present in the medium, depending upon the viscosity of the medium, kinds of other ingredients which are present in the medium, these ingredients will definitely try to interfere with the transfer of oxygen from environment to the bacterial cell. And therefore, in laboratory, what we are doing is simply the method which you can learn, but if you want to do it in an actual process, then the medium of the fermentation which is being used, that has to be replaced together with the sodium sulfide. I hope the answer is clear. So we come to the second question. Komal, please ask the question.
Myself Komal Makwana from PhD Science Kalol College. My question is why E. coli is chosen as indicator organism in bacteriological water analysis, and can other organism be used as indicator organism?
Okay, Komal, your question is about the analysis of water. Dr. Rawal will be able to answer this question very nicely. Mr. Rawal, please.
As we all know, E. coli is a part of the normal flora of the gastrointestinal tract, and there are about 10 raised to 13 bacteria excreted in the fecal material of the adult person per day, and there are about 10⁷ E. coli cells per gram of the wet fecal material. Now, there are certain advantages offered by the E. coli, that it is the part of the normal flora of the gastrointestinal tract, and the presence of E. coli is the definite indication of the fecal pollution of the water. E. coli are present in the greater number. Then the second advantage is that E. coli are constantly present in the fecal matter, and it is also easy to detect the E. coli as compared to the other intestinal tract pathogen. Generally, the intestinal tract pathogen, for example, the causative agent of the typhoid or paratyphoid fever, or the causative agent of the dysentery, these pathogenic organisms are present in the less number, and hence it is quite difficult to detect them, and also for each individual specific pathogen, specific techniques are required, whereas it is relatively easy to detect E. coli. For example, as we know that in the laboratory test for the detection of E. coli, we are performing presumptive test, confirmed test, and completed test. So for this we require the McConkey's broth as well as the EMB agar medium, and for the quantitative estimation of E. coli we perform most probable number technique, in which we are enumerating the number of the coliforms including E. coli present per 100 ml of the water. So this is the reason that why we are selecting E. coli. However, apart from E. coli, other organisms which are also the part of the normal flora of the gastrointestinal tract, for example Streptococcus faecalis, this gram positive cocci can also be chosen as an indicator of the fecal pollution of water. In that case, we are using the sodium azide broth instead of the McConkey's broth for their enumeration and detection, as well as we can also select the Clostridium perfringens, which are also the part of the normal flora of the gastrointestinal tract, as a indicator of the fecal pollution. Presence of E. coli is regarded as a signal that this water is subjected to fecal pollution, and therefore it is not suitable for the human consumption. I think you must be satisfied with my answer.
Well answered, Dr. Raul. The next question to Sanjay.
Hello, sir. I am Sanjay Jala from MNN Virani Science College. My question is, what are the drawbacks of Vidal slide agglutination test?
Sanjay, you must be knowing that Vidal test is being performed either in tube or in slides. That is, we have a tube test as well as a slide test. Now the slide test is basically a very handy and a rapid, in a sense that you get the results very instantaneously within say 10 minutes maximum, and therefore in many of the laboratories where the reports are required fast in order to start the treatment for typhoid, at times doctors prefer to perform this test, or they recommend this test to be done by the technician. Now the advantage is the rapidity of the test, while there are lots of disadvantages, in the sense that many times, because the sera or the antigens, if they dry up, then they may lead to the false positive presumptive test, false positive this test, slide test. So in order to avoid that, this has to be always been to be followed by the tube test. So advantages are there, it's about rapidity of the test, but it also has a disadvantage. So it is always to be followed by Vidal tube test. I hope it is clear to you, Mr. Sanjay. Next question, Pooja.
Myself, Pooja Chittodia from RG Science College, and my question is that why is the why alkaline condition is required for the estimation of sugar by DNS method?
Dr. Rawal, please.
Pooja, it is a good question. The full name of the DNS method is a dinitrosalicylic acid method. This is a specific method, a colorimetric method for the estimation of the reducing sugar. Now reducing sugar in the alkaline condition is converted into the acyclic enediol form, and in the enediol form it is highly reactive. It is having the greater reducing activity, and therefore not only in the DNS method but in the other methods for estimation of the reducing sugar, for example in the fall-in-view method as well as in the Nielsen-Somogyi method, and also in the qualitative test for the estimation of the detection of the sugar, that is the Benedict test also, the same principle is applied. When we treat it with the alkali dinitrosalicylic acid, it is having the 2 nitro group at the position 3 and 5, hence its systematic name is a 3,5-dinitrosalicylic acid, and the nitro group present at the C5 position, it is reduced into amino group, and therefore now this reduced compound is referred to as 3-amino-5-nitrosalicylic acid, and this compound is a orange yellow colored. So original compound is a yellow colored, but under alkaline condition, when it is reduced by the reducing sugar, for example like a glucose, when we are estimating the glucose, the compound is reduced to orange colored complex, and its optical density can now be measured at a 490 nanometer, and this is the reason that why while estimating the reducing sugar, always the alkaline condition is essential. I think it must be clear to you.
Okay, next question, Hetal.
Myself Hetal.
Yes, please. Hetal, go
PHGM
on.
Goswami Arts and Science College. My question is, what is the function of normal saline?
Hetal, normal saline is basically nothing else but 0.85% solution of NaCl. Now this normal saline is widely used in biological sciences for variety of reasons. First and foremost reason is normal saline having a concentration of 0.85%, which is having the same osmotic molality as that of our blood or our body fluids. Because of this, we call it as a normal saline. Normal means it is having a same kinds of osmomolality. Therefore, whenever certain in vivo or even in vitro tests are to be performed for various purposes, normal saline is widely used. Primarily for first, whenever we want to suspend any kind of cells, we always prefer a buffer solution having a normal saline. Second, even in serological reactions, normal saline is used in a sense that normal saline is believed to reduce the charges, and therefore it brings together the antigen and antibody molecules together. So these are the two basic experiments which are there in your syllabus where normal saline is being used for the experimental purposes. I hope this will be clear to you. Next question to Krupal.
Myself Krupal Jogi. And sir, my question is, what is erythroblastic fetalis?
Well, Krupal, this condition is also known as a hemolytic anemia of the newborn babies, and this condition actually arises due to the incompatibility of the Rh blood group. Suppose if father is a Rh positive and the mother is Rh negative, the fetus may also be Rh positive. Now during the first pregnancy, the placental membrane, it is a semi-permeable and through which the RBC cannot pass, but the antibodies can pass. So what happens that at the time of the delivery, first delivery, some of the RBC may leak into the maternal circulation, and this RBC being Rh positive from the fetus will stimulate the production of anti-Rh antibody in the maternal circulation. Now during subsequent pregnancy, this anti-Rh antibody may destroy the red blood cells of the fetus, because the anti-Rh antibody which are present in the maternal circulation can cross the placental membrane and thus will destroy the red blood cells in the body of the fetus. and therefore the baby, newborn baby, may be suffering from this condition known as a erythroblastosis fetalis or hemolytic anemia, and therefore it is always preferred that before the marriage the blood group of the father as well as mother should be determined, and if possible the father and mother both should have the Rh positive blood group. In this case, to avoid this severe condition, it is advisable to check the blood group of the father and mother.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rawal. Next question to Payal. Krupal, sorry. Yes, please.
Myself Patel Payal, and I am from Sri PHGM Arts and Science College, and my question is, VBNC mean viable but not culturable organisms are not detectable by sterility testing as it is based on culturing method. If such VBNC organism present in product, the sterility test show negative result. Can such product consider as applicable?
Well, Payal, basically sterility testing is done to check whether a given product is sterile or not, and this has got a lots of applications in pharmaceuticals. Now, to tell you about VBNC, viable but not culturable, it means organisms are there in the sample, and they are viable, they are living, but whenever we are plating them or whenever we try to grow them, they are not growing. There can be so many reasons. First, the medium ingredients or the medium is not supportive to the nutritional requirement of the organism, and therefore it will not be able to use them. Second reason, the environmental conditions may not be supportive. For example, if the organisms are thermophiles or psychrophiles, organisms may not grow there when we are incubating at a normal 30-35 degrees centigrade. And the third one, which is very important, is organisms, many of them, they are under stress. That is, those organisms which have been damaged either during the exposure to UV rays or gamma rays or during autoclaving also. At that time, these organisms, they are damaged to certain extent, and therefore they will not be able to utilize the nutrition and replicate and able to grow. Therefore, the sterility testing, because of these limitations and many more, basically it detects the gross sterility of the pharmaceutical products, and in actual sense, in practice, in industry, for any industrial product, 100% sterility is also not desirable, either in a fermentative industries or in a pharmaceutical industries, because sterilization is a very costly affair and only a threshold sterility is required. Even during the pharmaceutical products where the sterility is of highly importance, at that time also, from a batch of say several thousands, only few samples at random are taken, and then the sterility does. So it is based on the probability kind of tests. So because of all these limitations, still according to the various guidelines proposed by FDA, sterility testing is must and it is done. I hope this is clear, Payal. Next, Nasnin.
Myself, Bukhari Nasmin, from RG Science College. My question is, what is Bombay blood group?
Yeah, Dr. Rawal, she is asking about the Bombay blood group.
Bombay blood group is a rare blood group in the sense that its prevalence rate is 1 out of 10 raised to 6 persons. However, in the city like Bombay, it is found that its incidence is quite higher, and therefore this blood group is labeled as Bombay blood group. Now, in this blood group, the person having this blood group is lacking the A antigen, B antigen and H antigen on the surface of RBC. We know these blood group antigens are referred to as hemagglutinogen, and the H substance is a basic substance and it is synthesized from the precursor present in the cell membrane of RBC, and the enzyme responsible for this is known as alpha delta glucosyl transferase enzyme. Now due to certain reason, that is the mutation in the H gene encoding for the H antigen, this H substance could not be synthesized. If H substance could not be synthesized, it is the precursor for the further synthesis of A antigen and B antigen by the addition of N-acetyl glucosamine in case of A antigen and galactose sugar in case of the B antigen by the transferase enzyme. So thus when H substance is absent, there is no question of the further synthesis of A antigen and B antigen, and thus in such person A antigen, B antigen and H antigen are found to be absent on the surface of RBC, and such unusual blood group is referred to as a Bombay blood group.
Well answered, Dr. Raul. Next question to Kinjal.
Myself, Kinjal Patel, from PhD Arts and Science College, Kolur. My question is, why soil is selected as the source of screening of industrial important organism?
Kinjal wants to know why soil is basically used for screening purposes, screening of microorganisms, to be very accurate. Now Kinjal, actually screening, we do it to isolate the organisms which are of some industrial importance, and we are interested in having some new enzymes, we are interested in having certain new antibiotics or any product from organisms which is of some importance to human being, of some help to human being. Now you know that the earth is basically nothing else but a dumping ground at present, dumping ground for almost virtually all things in the world. Any waste finally finds its way to the soil or to the earth, and there are thousands of organisms which are present in soil. These organisms, they come across these kinds of waste materials having a different types of chemical composition. So basically they are exposed to not one substrate, they are exposed to almost all kinds of substrates available in the world, and for them during the process of evolution they are to synthesize, in order to use them they are to synthesize various enzymes required for its breakdown. Therefore out of millions of organisms, maybe one or two may have evolved in such a way that they possess those kinds of enzymes. So in a laboratory, when we perform a screening, screening is a highly selective method, and we provide that particular substrate whose the organisms can use. So out of millions, only few will be able to grow. Now it is not only the soil, but apart from soil, the sources can be certain things like sewage, or if it is a highly selective one, we can have, suppose we want to isolate a hydrocarbon utilizing organisms, we can select the soil from the oil well, or we can also use certain compounds or soil from petrol pump. Like this, it is better to have a previous knowledge of the organisms, its physiology, and what we are intending to do. Depending upon that, sources can be selected. But however, again to remind you that soil is one of the base sources. Next question to Kinjal 2.
Myself Patel Kinjal, study in MB Patel Science College. My question is that how O and N and H antigen are prepared?
Rahul sir.
Kinjal, we are using the H and O antigen for the qualitative as well as the quantitative diagnosis of the enteric fever, that is Vidal qualitative test as well as Vidal quantitative test by Dreer's technique. And your question is with reference to how these antigens are prepared. O antigen is also known as a somatic antigen because it is a part of the structural component, that is the cell wall of the bacteria. We know that in case of the gram negative bacteria, cell wall is a bilayered. Inner layer is made up of a peptidoglycan, and it is relatively a thin layer as compared to the peptidoglycan layer found in the cell wall of gram-positive bacteria. Gram-positive bacterial cell wall is monolayered and it is made up chiefly of peptidoglycan, rather a thick layer. And the outer layer in case of gram-negative bacteria is made up of lipopolysaccharide plus protein. And this O antigen is a part of this outer layer, that is the sugars which are present there in the lipopolysaccharide are having this antigenic activity. So when we want to prepare the O antigen, first of all we have to cultivate these gram-negative bacteria on the nutrient agar slant, and thereafter we prepare the suspension in a normal saline, and the bacteria are killed by treating with the specific concentration of a phenol. This is followed by further killing the bacteria by exposing at a higher temperature of 60 degree centigrade for 1 hour. And then as a preservative we are adding 0.25% chloroform. So this is how the O antigen is ready, and if the organism are Salmonella typhi, Salmonella paratyphi A, Salmonella paratyphi B, their respective O antigen can be used now in the Vidal test. And for H antigen, which is referred to as flagellar antigen, it is a part of a heat stable protein known as a flagellin, having the molecular weight of 40,000 Dalton, and it is having the high antigenic activity. So to prepare the H antigen, we have to select the flagellated culture of the specific organism, and then we have to grow them in a nutrient broth or the glucose broth, and then the organisms are killed by adding the formalin and further treated at a high temperature, relatively high temperature of 50 or 55 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. And this is how the antigen is ready for the use.
Okay, next question again. Nishit.
Which factors influence the results of bioassay?
Well,
No.
there are many factors which will affect the results of bioassay. Bioassay basically is to determine an active compound which gives either positive or negative response to microorganisms. Negative response means inhibitory property of the biologically active compound, and positive response means growth promoting substances like vitamins. Now, whenever we are performing bioassay, basically we are measuring the zone size, zone formed by either growth promoting substances or by inhibition, zone of inhibition. So that zone size will vary on so many different aspects. The first and foremost aspect is the culture sensitivity. If the culture is sensitive, zones will be larger or smaller depending upon promoting activity or inhibitory activity. Similarly, the density of the culture, then the property of bioactive molecule, whether it is soluble, more soluble or insoluble, or how rapidly it diffuses, then the pH and composition of the medium, followed by thickness of the agar medium, as well as the potency of the test solution, and last but not the least, volume and the time of incubation of the plates. So these are not one, multiple factors which will in all affect the zone size, and therefore it is necessary to standardize all these kinds of factors and then perform the bioassay. Otherwise, bioassay can mislead and give a wrong results. Next question, Komal.
My question is how the antibiotic discs are prepared for commercial use.
She is asking how antibiotic discs are being prepared for commercial use. Basically, antibiotic discs which are to be used for a commercial purposes are prepared from a good quality of a filter paper like Whatman filter paper, having a diameter of around 6 mm are widely used. these antibiotic discs which are prepared from the filter paper, these are placed in a fixed amount or appropriate amount of appropriate concentration of the antibiotic solution. Say for example 30 micrograms or 60 micrograms or 15 micrograms, depending upon the type of antibiotic and its correlation of MIC. As a result, the antibiotic filter paper will absorb these antibiotic on the disc. Once the antibiotic has been absorbed onto it, it is then dried under vacuum, that is under vacuum, because it cannot be dried at a higher temperature, otherwise the sensitive antibiotic may be destroyed. So drying at a low temperature constantly for long durations or for few hours will make that antibiotic disc dried, and then it can be packed in a container which has certain dehydrating agents and finally distributed to the laboratories. Next question please.
Sir, what is anti-serum and how does it differ from serum?
Yes, serum we are preparing by allowing blood to clot. When blood is clotted, then we centrifuge it and we separate the serum, which is slightly yellowish colored fluid, and it is free from the fibrin. During the clotting of the blood, fibrinogen is converted to insoluble fibrin. Well, antisera are prepared by injecting specific antigen. For example, the antiserum for the rabies is prepared by hyperimmunizing the horse, or antitoxic sera for the diphtheria also prepared by hyperimmunization of the horse. Similarly, we are also using the anti-A sera and anti-B sera as well as anti-RH sera for the blood grouping. So these are the anti-sera which are containing this specific antibody.
Okay, next question to Pooja.
How bioassay is superior to chemical assay?
Again, bioassay is basically done, as I have told you, to estimate a particular compound, but by using microorganisms or by using biological systems which are showing some activity against that compound. Now bioassay basically is more better as compared to chemical assay, in the sense that organisms, they show very selective and extreme sensitivity to a biologically active compound. That is, it can measure the compound which is occurring as less as 0.1 micrograms per ml. Well, chemical assay may miss it if the reaction is not very sensitive. Second reason about the specificity of the organisms. Organisms are able to detect even the changes in the groups of that particular compound. For example, levo or dextro rotatory compounds. It can differentiate between these two kinds of compounds also. Third thing, advantage of bioassay is sample requirement is very less, it is less expensive, and time consumed is also short. These advantages are not met with the chemical assays. One of the main limitations of the chemical assays is the chemical assay is a reaction base between the two compounds, and as a result the entire molecule, which may be active or inactive, will be measured in totality. So these are the advantages of bioassay as compared to chemical assay. Next question to Hetal.
My question is why bacteria growth is inhibited on the fungal media?
And Rahul sir?
See, for the isolation of the fungi, the best source is a soil, and if we look at the abundance of the bacteria as well as the fungi in the soil, fungi are present in the magnitude of 10 raised to 2 to 10 raised to 3, whereas in the fertile soil the bacteria are present in the magnitude of 10 raised to 9 or even more. So if we do not take the precaution, proper precaution, then the bacteria may dominate the fungi, and therefore in order to suppress the growth of bacteria or to inhibit the growth of bacteria, we have to devise the fungal media in a such a way that bacteria could not grow. And for this purpose we are formulating the media which are containing the inorganic constituents, for example the magnesium or sodium nitrate, etc. And secondly, the pH of the medium is kept low, that is the acidic. Generally the pH of the medium, for example in Martin Rose Bengal agar or the Japex thom agar, the pH of the medium is 5.4. If you do not take the precaution, this is my practical experience while isolating the fungi from the soil, if we have not taken proper precaution for maintaining the low pH, pH 5.4, and if it is not properly adjusted and if it is more, that is say if it is nearly neutral or even slightly alkaline, then bacteria will grow and will dominate and will not allow the fungi to grow properly. Therefore, the pH of the medium must be kept low, that is the specific pH 5.4. And thirdly, we are adding certain inhibitory chemicals, or we are adding the inhibitory antibiotics. For example, the streptomycin, it is added into Martin Rose Bengal agar medium, and this medium, such modified medium, is now referred to as streptomycin Martin Rose Bengal agar medium. Streptomycin is an aminoglycoside antibiotic which inhibits the initiation of the translation in the prokaryotes, and as it interferes with the protein synthesis in a prokaryote, it does not have any adverse effect on the translation process in fungi, which is eukaryote. And furthermore, MRBA medium also contains Rose Bengal agar dye. So this dye also makes the medium acidic, and it is also inhibitory, not allowing fungi to grow. So these three criteria, that is the incorporation of the inorganic constituents, secondly keeping the pH low, and thirdly by addition of inhibitory chemicals or antibiotics, we are making media favorable for the growth of fungi. I think this must be clear to you.
Next question to Krupal. I hope Krupal I am right this time to spell you. Last time I'm sorry I spelled it as a Krupal, but it is actually Krupal. Yes, Krupal, please answer. Please ask your question.
Sir, my question is why we are counting RBC at that time we are diluting up to 101 mark, and WBC counting we are diluted up to 11 mark. So in Thomas pipette. So please give me information about that.
Okay, Krupal, first of all let me tell you that these methods are nowadays obsolete methods. No laboratory at present in India would be using these kinds of technique, using Newber chamber and Thoma pipette. But still, for beginners, this is a basic technique by which RBCs and WBCs can be determined, counts can be determined. Now, as you know that the normal value of RBC in a human being ranges from 4.5 to around 6 million, that is 4.5 to 6 into 10 raised to 6 cells per mm cube, millimeter cube, while that of WBC is extremely less as compared to RBC, that is just 5 to 10,000 cells per mm cube, cubic millimeter. Now, therefore, it is necessary that while taking a blood sample, it needs to be dilution and then it is to be placed on the Newber chamber, because Newber chamber has got a certain kinds of cells having a fixed dimensions. Now, in order to dilute them, the Thoma pipette is used with the diluting fluid. Amount of blood withdrawn in both the cases is same, that is up to 0.5. But Thoma pipette, which is used for RBC, has a larger bulb and it can accommodate more diluting fluid, and therefore dilution which we achieve at the end is 10 up to 1. When we withdraw the fluid, diluting fluid up to 101, the final dilution which we achieve is around 1:200, while that of WBC, where the diluting fluid, that is a Turk solution which is sucked in, is up to 11 mark, and it gives a dilution of 1:20. So basic requirement is the dilution, so that we get appropriate number of cells in the Neubauer chamber, that is the cells of the Neubauer chamber, and then can carry on the counting. I hope this makes it very clear to you. Next question to Payal, please.
My question is that what is Weil-Felix reaction and give its clinical importance?
Rahul sir.
Well, Weil-Felix reaction is an agglutination reaction, and it is useful for the differential diagnosis of rickettsial diseases. Here, actually this reaction was discovered by an accident by the scientist. Here the antigen, somatic antigen, O antigen, is a heterophile antigen, and it is not an antigen of the rickettsia, but the antigen is of Proteus vulgaris and Proteus mirabilis. OXK, OX19 antigen and OX2 antigen of Proteus vulgaris and OXK antigen of the Proteus mirabilis are used in this test, and we check the presence of antibody against the rickettsia. With the help of this test, we can diagnose certain rickettsial diseases like epidemic typhus, endemic typhus, then the Ginser disease. However, in case of the trench fever and cube fever, which are also rickettsial diseases, Weil-Felix reaction is a negative, but a negative reaction is also useful in differentiating between the various rickettsial infection.
Thank you, Rahul sir. The next question to, well, I will like to interfere in the sense that last time I forgot one name, number 11. Please ask your question.
Myself, Pandya Arpita from Ardisha Science College. My question is, do the oral antibiotic kill the normal flora of colon? If yes, does it have an adverse effect on the health of patient?
Well, Arpita, whenever we are taking some antibiotic is basically used to cure our health. Basically, these kinds of drugs, they have a selective toxicity. That is, they will be able to kill microorganisms, but it will not be able to affect the human cells. This is a primary requirement for any drug. That is, it should show a kind of a selective toxicity. Now, the antibiotic which is showing these kinds of activity, naturally they are going to harm the pathogenic organisms. But as you know that it is not the pathogenic organism in our system. In our colon there are pathogens as well as there are certain normal flora. These normal flora, they play a very predominant role, first as a habitat itself, because they occupy the sites in the colon, and second, they also play an important role by synthesizing certain vitamins as well as growth factors which are needed for human beings. Now, whenever we are taking some antibiotics, naturally these kinds of flora are going to be disturbed, but primary requirement at that particular time is to cure the patient, and therefore we do not have any other alternative but to take those antibiotics to kill the pathogens. But simultaneously these normal flora are definitely going to be disturbed, and in many cases when such kinds of antibiotics are taken, at that time doctors also recommend certain additive compounds, like say for example tablets of lactic acid bacteria, that is the spores of lactobacilli, which will be replacing our normal flora, because normal flora is being washed out, they are killed by the antibiotics, and that can be replaced by lactic acid microorganisms. So I hope this is clear to you. Now coming back to the next sequence, who was there in a line, please?
My question is, what is basis of selection filter in colorimeter? How absorption of maximize of determined by readily are taken in terms of OD and not in terms of percentage transmission?
Okay, this is about a colorimetry. Now you know that in colorimetry the selection of filters basically depends upon the type of color, final color, which is to be put in the colorimetry for estimation. Now there are complementary colors in a light. Normally the color which we see is not the color which is being absorbed. Whatever the color which we see is being the color which is being reflected, and therefore there are certain complementary colors which are to be basically remembered. For example, if the solution is of a blue color, then we will always use the filter which is of a yellow color. Similarly, if the solution is blue green, then we will have to use red color, or vice versa. So these kinds of complementary colors are always there, and these kinds of filters are to be selected. Now once the filter is selected, then the next thing is that we have to go for a absorption maxima. This can be usually done by using the solution at two different concentration and taking its reading at different wavelengths. Now the wavelengths which show the corresponding highest absorption, that is being selected for the absorption maxima. And finally, why we don't we take the results in terms of absorption and not in terms of OD? OD and extinction coefficient, these were the two terms which have been being used earlier. Now they have been replaced by what we call it as a absorption coefficient. Now the absorption, in short, A, is directly proportional to the logarithmic minus log of transmission, that is 1 upon T, log of 1 upon T. So transmission is logarithmic and absorption is a direct value, and therefore basically the solution absorbs the light, and therefore we are using the term absorption coefficient, that is the A. I hope these things are clear to you. Next please.
How are the solution of UH, UL, SH, L, SS are prepared?
Please, Dr. Rahul.
Well, your question is with reference to the bioassay. In bioassay, we can estimate antibiotics as well as the vitamins, amino acids, using the microorganism as the indicator. And in earlier question, it was discussed that the amount of the solution is also one of the factor affecting the result of the bioassay. So not only the amount, but the concentration which we select is also an important parameter. Depending upon our assumption regarding the concentration of the compound to be estimated, may it be antibiotic or amino acid or vitamin, accordingly we have to prepare the standard high and unknown high. So generally the standard low and the unknown low is diluted 4 times from the standard high and unknown low, unknown high respectively. Okay.
Okay, thank you all, sir. Next question please.
What is correlation of MIC performed in vitro to that of dosage in the patient?
Please, Kinjal, I would like to answer in a sense that MIC stands for a minimum inhibitory concentration. If you define minimum inhibitory concentration, it means that the amount of or the least concentration at which there will be inhibition of organism in vitro. Now MIC basically is always determined in vitro, that is in test tubes, by taking different dilutions of the antibiotic and adding the fixed number of or fixed density of microorganisms. Finally we come to know that this particular value, this particular microgram is the MIC value. Now, well, that MIC value, will that MIC value be, can that be directly given to the patient? Well, answer is no. It cannot be correlated, because the reason is that in a body there are various pharmacokinetics which are taken to be considerations, because whenever we are taking a tablet, you must have come to know that tablets having a size which is as much as 500 milligrams or even a 1 gram tablets are available in the market. See the amount of antibiotics which we take in routinely, but when it comes to MIC, it is in micrograms. So these values do not coincide. The reason is, whenever we take some antibiotic, for example oral antibiotic, it goes to our stomach, and in stomach there are acids which will destroy certain amount of antibiotic, or it will not be properly absorbed by the colon. Third, there are various other proteins, there are various other enzymes which may inactivate these antibiotics. And finally, when everything is absorbed and reaches to the body fluid, that value should be something like a MIC or slightly higher. Normally, in a routine, these values may be as large as 5 to 10 times the original MIC value. Then and then, if that particular concentration is constantly maintained for 3-4 days, at that time only the patient is liable to be cured. If that dosage is coming down, then the resultant will be the microorganisms will not be inhibited, they will again start growing. That may lead to reoccurrence of a disease in a sense. So MIC value, if it is the duty of a doctor to correlate MIC and that of the dosage which is being standardized, and it has to be taken, various pharmacokinetics aspects are to be taken into consideration. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Next please.
Why WBC count is increased during the infection?
Rahul sir?
The increase in the WBC count is also referred to as leukocytosis, and there are 5 different types of leukocytes or WBC, and increase in any one of them will lead to this condition. If there is increase in neutrophil, condition is known as neutrophilia. If there is a increase in monocytes, the condition is referred to as monocytosis. And as we all know, the polymorphonuclear neutrophils and the monocytes are the phagocytic cells, and their function is to engulf and destroy the pathogenic bacteria which are invading our blood circulation. So when there is a infection in the blood, condition of bacteremia followed by septicemia, in order to control the infection, there will be an increase in the number of the WBC, and this condition known as a leukocytosis will be found during the various microbial infections. I think it must be clear to you.
Well answered, Dr. Rahul. Next question please.
Of positive and negative control media in sterility testing.
Okay, Nishit wants to know what is the use of positive and negative control in media which are being used for sterility testing. Basically, for a sterility testing, we use different media which are supportive for the growth of bacteria as well as fungi. Now, the media can be anything, but you should always have a control with you. And in this case, apart from the test in which we inoculate the sample, we also take into consideration the positive control as well as negative control. The reason is, positive control will basically determine whether the medium has been properly prepared or not, in a way that if it is not supportive to the growth of the organisms, then even the positive control will not grow, and we will come to know that there is no use of using this kind of media, because your sample will show negative result. Secondly, about the negative control. Negative control are to check the sterility of the medium, whether these media are properly sterilized or not. If they are not sterilized properly, again the contaminant will automatically go. This will mislead in a sense that the sample is contaminated. The product, though it is a sterile, it will show the growth in the test control, because the reason is medium was not properly autoclaved, it was not properly sterilized. Therefore, it is always mandatory to use positive and negative control media during sterility testing along with the test media. I hope this is clear to you. Next question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Komal.
How Salmonella species are differentiated in the basis of biochemical characters?
Yes, Rahul sir.
Komal, there are 3 main species of Salmonella. Salmonella typhi causing typhoid fever, Salmonella paratyphi A and Salmonella paratyphi B causing paratyphoid fever. Typhoid and paratyphoid fever are collectively also referred to as enteric fever. So for differential diagnosis of enteric fever, clinical microbiological investigation are quite useful. Physician cannot differentiate between the different types of enteric fever, that is the typhoid and paratyphoid fever, on the basis of clinical symptoms. The causative agent must be isolated from the clinical specimen like stool and must be identified. So we are taking the help of the biochemical test, and the glucose key is quite useful for this purpose. In glucose, if the sugar is fermented with production of only acid, Salmonella typhi present, and if acid and gas are there in the glucose sugar, Salmonella paratyphi A and B may be present. Then in case of Salmonella typhi, not only the glucose but the sugar like mannitol and xylose are also fermented with the production of acid, and H2S test is positive. Whereas now for differentiating between the Salmonella paratyphi A and paratyphi B, we take the help of the xylose sugar. If xylose test is negative, if xylose is not fermented, organism is a Salmonella paratyphi A. Not only it does not ferment the xylose sugar, but also it does not produce H2S. H2S is negative in case of Salmonella paratyphi B. Whereas in case of the Salmonella paratyphi B, xylose sugar is fermented, H2S test is also positive. And this reaction can also be checked on TSI agar slant, that is the triple sugar ion agar slant, which is containing the glucose and the lactose and sucrose. Lactose and sucrose are disaccharide, glucose is a monosaccharide. The ratio of monosaccharide versus disaccharide is 1/10, and the pH indicator is a phenol red. So by checking the H2S production, gas production and the acid production, we can also differentiate between these three pathogens.
Well answered. Well, this will be our last question, friends, because time limitations are there, and I would ask the last part student to answer the question, ask the question, please.
Yes, sir. So why the T broth rather than the N broth, means nutrient broth, is preferred to isolate bacteriophages, and what is this T broth?
Okay, please. Basically, T broth is used for the isolation of bacteriophages. Bacteriophages are nothing else but they are the viruses of the bacteria, and they attach to the bacterial cell. You know the entire procedure in the theory you have studied. It is the attachment followed by penetration, the intracellular multiplication, and finally lysis. So first part, that is the attachment. The organism, that is the virus, T phage has to attach, bacteriophage has to attach on the cell. Now in order to attach with the cells, what these phages need is certain metal ions. For example, magnesium and calcium metal ions. Now ordinary broth, ordinary media like nutrient media, they will not be able to provide these kinds of nutrients to the phage required for the attachment, and therefore what is necessary is that we should have a medium like a tea broth which contains calcium chloride as well as magnesium sulfate as a salts. Additionally, it also has a glucose and peptone and yeast extracts. So this is the composition of tea broth, which is very favorable for the attachment of the bacteriophage and the isolation of the phage. I hope this is clear to you. So dear students, here we come to an end of this kind of oral question answer session, student teacher interaction, and I would definitely like all students to ask such questions more and more to their teachers in their laboratory, because here we have got a limited 1 hour and we cannot discuss all your queries. So a good student will always have why, how, what in his mind, and please I request all students that you ask these questions to your respective teachers in the laboratory. Well, with this I would like to end, and I would like to acknowledge and thank the staff members of the BISEC studio. Then I would also like to have or acknowledge Dr. Sarvaiya, who is the director of Sandhan and BISEC program. His presence has made this process of BISEC and administration very smooth and very nice. And last but not the least, I would like to have my heartfelt thanks to the Director of Higher Education, Madam, which has made this program to reach to all students all over the Gujarat. Thank you very much.